Discover connection, awaken sacredness, become empowered. Join us for our show on Blog Talk Radio. Discover your spiritual gifts live.
Welcome to Discover Your Spiritual Gifts Live, show number 41. We are your hosts, Dave.
Vialet.
Our guest today is Mandara Cromwell. Mandara Cromwell, D.C.M, a Doctorate of Cymatic Medicine, is an American woman entrepreneur and inventor who is the CEO and president of Cyma Technologies, the manufacturing company for her own inventions, the AMI Acoustic Meridian Intelligence devices. The AMI 750, an advanced sound technology device, was nominated for the Thomas Edison Award for Innovation in the Fields of Science and Medicine in 2013. In 2002, she coined the term Cymatherapy to refer to wave therapy based on the work of Dr. Peter Guy Manners, with whom she studied extensively. In 2017, she produced the Atlanta conference Cymatics, the Art and Science of Making Sound Visible, which featured never-before-seen sound-made visible images of the healing frequencies found in her own sound therapy devices. She acted as co-producer on two short films created at the University of Florida, utilizing cymatic images, Dance Divine, featuring dance, yoga, and the sound images, as well as Full of Stars, a short film showing three-dimensional views of the healing frequencies. In 2019, she released her first book, Soundflower, The Journey to Marry Science and Spirit, which includes many stunning Cyma glyph illustrations. So welcome, Mandara. That sounds very fascinating.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to be here with you and Vialet.
So tell us more about Cymatherapy. I've studied sound, as an electrical engineer. I've seen it on the oscilloscope. I've taken transducers and put granules on them to see the different patterns of different frequencies of resonance. So I'm very curious about, what does this look like? How do you do acoustic therapy?
I started with meditation back early in college. And after college, I went to India and studied there. And what I noticed in the temples, they had encoded symbols that we call yantras, which are geometric expressions of mantras, which is what we speak with sound, sort of like a Sanskrit prayer. And so those were the first images that I became aware of sound encoded in stone. And shortly after that, I came back to the United States and started a meditation center. And I was always trying to explain to people this power of the spoken word. And so I would use those yantras to say, this is what sound made visible looks like. And it wasn't until in 2001 when I became aware of the work of Dr. Hans Jenny, who is the person who coined the term cymatics, which is the science of wave phenomena, or the science of making sound visible, that I was really excited, because he was the first person in our modern day to use technology to actually see, people could see in real time what these images look like. And right after I was introduced to Dr. Jenny, I was introduced to the work of Dr. Peter Guy Manners, a British osteopath. And he and his collaborative group of scientists had come up with specific sound frequencies that correspond to different parts of the body. Like there's a special sound frequency pattern for the liver, and another one for the adrenals, and another one for your kidneys, and so on. And he, out of respect to Dr. Jenny, named his therapy Cymatic Therapy. Now, people get that a little confused, because the therapy itself is audible sound being placed on the body to assist with the reorganization of tissue. But cymatics is the science of making sound visible. So that's why in 2002, I separated those two terms so that people would have a better understanding that cymatics is the science of making sound visible, and cymatherapy is the therapeutic application of specific sound frequencies.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. So tell us more about how you do healing on bodies. How do you determine what bodies need, and then what does the treatment look like? I need to get my head around this a little bit more.
Certainly. Let me share with you a little bit about my time with Dr. Peter Guy Manners, a British osteopath.
Okay.
And I think that'll kind of bring everything into focus. The work that I was given by him was the work that was collaborated by a group of scientists and researchers after the Second World War. And this group of collaborators found that there were specific sound frequencies that correspond to different parts of the body. And interestingly enough, it's not just one frequency or two frequencies or three, it's actually 5 frequencies that will say bring your liver back into a harmonic resonance. So we have all of these, 750 approximate frequency patterns that correspond to each part of the body. And so that's the body of work that I worked with him on. And since his passing, what I do is I take those frequency patterns and research them and figure out how they affect the human body, how they affect human tissue. For example, how do they affect a person that has inflammation or pain or stress? And so I take those specific frequency patterns and layer them into programs or protocols for people who are addressing inflammatory processes in their body, for people who are experiencing significant pain throughout their body, or having challenges, with a specific system like the respiratory system or the immune system, which we're so aware of right now due to this world of pandemic that we're in.
Right.
So these are specific sounds that enhance and support that body system.
Okay. Yeah, I had an experience. My first job out of grad school was working at General Motors, and one of my early assignments was to come up with an ultrasonic sensor to measure airflow in carburetors. And I was working with transducers on the bench, and one day I was tuning through the frequencies on it, just seeing its behavior, and all of a sudden I just had a big wave of nausea come over me, and I felt really bad. I thought, well, this is weird. So I put it away and came back a couple days later, fired it up again. It happened again, and that's when I realized that the transducer, whatever it was doing ultrasonically, had made me ill. And so I ended up having a plexiglass cover made for it so I wouldn't be exposed to it. So, I truly do see, sound as potentially having effects on us. But it also leads me to think, with your exposure to all this on the sound, looking at your work with sound and everything, how much of music out there can you look at, maybe classical music going back or modern music, you could constructively say it has an effect on us, maybe unintended or intended, that is healing, but in some cases some of the music might be detrimental to us.
That's true. And what I'd like to share with you is the work of the French physician, Dr. Alfred Cymatics, and his just very simple way to determine if sound is giving you energy is it giving you energy? Are you feeling a positive effect when you listen to that music? And if it's draining you, if it's making you feel, depressing you, then that music is not for you. I am asked this question a lot when I give presentations just generally on sound on behalf of the International Sound Therapy Association, particularly to schools and parenting groups. They always say, oh my gosh, what about this music that my child is listening to?
Uh-huh.
So if we use that as a measure, also there's the work of Don Campbell, who is singing with the Heavenly Choir now, but Don Campbell is famous for his book, The Mozart Effect. And I was in a workshop once with Don, and there were a lot of nurses. He did a lot of his workshops in the setting of clinical and hospital settings. And there was a nurse who shared with us that her physician, her surgeon that she works with, likes to listen to heavy metal music when he's in the operating room. And of course, all of us in the workshop went, oh gosh, that poor patient. Oh my goodness, all those poor surgical staff who are there. And Don held up his finger and said, what type of surgeon do you work with? And she said, an orthopedic surgeon.
Right.
So if you think about it, there are a lot of saws and hammers and
chisels,
things like that.
Very mechanical form of surgery, yes.
So, that, of course, when we go into surgery, we want whatever our surgeon is grooving to. We want that kind of music. Of course, we could put a headset in and listen to our own type of music. Mm-hmm. But so we want to surround ourselves with the sounds that really empower us. Because believe me, we have enough sound in our environment that, depletes our energy, and we just get so weary from it. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, it's really good to know or just become aware of those facts, because then you have control of creating your own environment.
Absolutely.
And I would like to comment on your experience with the transducer and the ultrasonic sounds. There are sounds that are not as supportive for us. Mm-hmm. I mean, the reason we hear those sirens, those high-pitched sounds, is to wake us up and say, hey, you need to pay attention here. And so the ultrasound is a area of sound that has really come forward the past decade or two as far as ultrasound, using it therapeutically for like lithotripsy, which is the pulverization of kidney stones and gallstones. And also they're doing a lot of studies using ultrasound in laboratories studying Alzheimer's for, dementia and those, the plaque, et cetera. So we need to be mindful of what sounds. We want fire to cook our food, but we don't want to burn the house down. So that's the same way we need to look at sound. We want the sounds that really help us through the day and give us harmony to do the things that we need to accomplish, but at the same time, we don't need to blast it and have it, in the detrimental zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely have a problem with those super loud basses that they put in cars, and they could drive around going thumpa, thumpa, thumpa. I just find that extremely grating and irritating. It makes me want to find a way to turn it off.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Different for everyone, and what they're open to or how it affects would sound be different, because one person might love Mozart, the other person might not be really into that, and so how we react to sound, I would think, would be different, and we'd have to think about that as well, right? Because we all listen to different kinds of music. And I find there are days I want to listen to this kind and days that I want to listen to that kind, depending on where I'm at, emotionally, how things are happening around me. I use music to lift my spirit, or to let me grieve, or to let me cry, and I use different for what I need physically. Does that make sense? So it would be different for different people?
Absolutely, and congratulations that you're aware of that, because so many people are not aware that we can harness sound to help us navigate through our day and through our night. When I want to meditate, I start calming down with some meditative music. And when I want to clean out my garage, I put something on that has a little pep to it, so I can, keep my my hips moving and my steps happening, because I need to accomplish this task. So we're using sound to really empower ourselves. And there was a experiment that came out last year from John Reed's laboratory in the UK, and the name of the study is Music as Medicine. And he took blood, type O blood, and divided it into 2 vials and tested it on all types of music, everything from a female voice, a male voice, chanting, the music of gong and harpsichord, piano, dance, techno music, all of these types of music. And then he also tested a particular sound frequency that we have available in the AMI 750 for cell regeneration. So all of those types of music, this is how the experiment went. He took the samples of the blood and divided it into 2 for each section. And 1 sample of the blood he would put in a Faraday cage, which there's no sound. It's not being impacted. Then in the other incubator, the sound incubator, he would project that particular soundtrack that he was researching. After 20 minutes, he would pull each of them out, and he would stain the cells with something called taipan blue, which is a stain so you could see which cells are still alive. And then he would feed them through an authentic cell counter, and then that would generate the computer printout of how many cells were still alive. So it's very interesting that the music, just the mere fact that there was vibration, increased the cell count. Wow. So we're talking about sound and vibration at the cellular level. Now, this is in vitro, okay? So this is not in the human body. We're only taking out a really very specific aspect of looking at sound and its effect at the cellular level. So the theory is that just the fact that there was sound, kind of like our heartbeat, is a mechanical wave, right? And so this mechanical wave is pulsing and vibrating at the cellular level, and therefore it fortifies the cellular membrane. And I hate to say agitate, but like energizes it to the point that it becomes alive. So with all of this, I will say that the bottom line was that our code for cell regeneration won the prize, because we had the most cells alive afterwards. And again, this is the theory that there's more cell permeability. And when there's more cell permeability, that means you're able to absorb the nutrition that you're eating, that you're ingesting through your food, that the cell has more strength to maneuver through the cell cycle, and to reproduce in a very energetically perfect fashion. Because cells that are very stressed out do not reproduce properly. So the whole thing about sound and music is really important to understand. And I'd like to go to the classical. You bring up the classical aspect of Mozart, etc., Dr. Cymatics in his studies found that there were two types of music all throughout the world that people resonated with, and it gave them energy. Those two types of music are the music of Mozart and Gregorian chant. So if you ever want energy, sound, food, try those two types of music. Now, he did examine other cultures like in Tibet and Korea and South America, all of in the indigenous peoples, they had subsets of their music that they responded well to as well. But the two top of the list ones are the music of Mozart, probably because it sounds so uplifting and sprightly. And then Gregorian chant, if you've ever spent any time listening to that, that's how I grew up, was in the Catholic Church with a lot of Latin masses and Gregorian chant. And so, the monks and the choir singing those long notes that really help calm down and balance the sympathetic parasympathetic system. So when you think about it from what it's doing to the brain and what it's doing to our nervous systems, you understand why Mozart and Gregorian chant are top of the list. But
well, it also sounds like we can be affected by music even if we weren't listening to it. Is it the vibration that's coming in? So let's say my son, I don't have a son, but let's say my son in the next room's playing whatever, that vibration's coming through, whether I'm connecting to listening to it or not. How far do those sound waves, do we know how far they go? Can they come through the wall? Can we feel that vibration? Can it have an impact with us?
It can. And just like Dave was explaining in his experiments with the transducer, in the ultrasound, he actually had to have a specific cage, shall we say, to partition him off from those vibrations having such a profound effect on him. And so, yes, sound waves do travel.
Wow, pretty fascinating. So we talk about how we can correct cells, how we can do things with music. Can we assess a person's body where it might be blocked or any of that with sound? Is there a way to use sound to really check in where somebody's at physically, mentally, or emotionally? Have we found ways to do that?
We have. Absolutely. And I'll just mention a few things that we use in the world of therapeutic sound to kind of get a pulse on what's happening with a person. There are people who use the voice, and they may tone over the body, and when they get to a specific part of a person's body in their energy session, the voice will meet a block or will change or maybe quiver. You can do the same thing with a tuning fork and wave that over a person's body, or you can do the same thing with a metal singing bowl. Just by listening to the tones change, you will identify certain places of blockage or stagnation. In the device that I created, the AMI 750, it's a device that you sit in a chair and you put your feet on it, kind of like a bathroom scales, okay, so it just sits close to the floor. And there's a special transducer that emits throughout the whole plate, so the whole plate transduces. And when people have their first session, a lot of times they don't feel anything. And with the knowledge of Chinese medicine, of the pathways of the meridians beginning at the bottom of the feet and coming all the way up through the body, we know that those are super highways for the sound to travel. So with the AMI 750, it's very likely that the first time somebody sits through a 30-minute session, they don't really feel anything. For people who have been doing energetic work, they will get on the device and they will feel it right away. They'll say, oh gosh, I feel my cells talking to each other. And as it goes up the body, you will hear the tones shift and change. And usually the sound is getting in there and kind of like, I like to say, like little Brillo pads, kind of straightening out the little dust bunnies that get clogged there. And the sound just gently massages and breaks through. So you will hear, again, a shift in the tones each time you are exposed to different types of the voice, the tuning fork, the bowl, the AMI 750. It takes a while. Not everybody hears it in the beginning, but people definitely do experience it from the get-go.
We're going to take a little break here. We'll be back a few moments after some important information about Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.
Hi, I'm Violet Rain, Master Teacher of the Akashic Records series of classes here at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts. If you've been interested in the Akashic Records are the life book or the etheric records of everything that we've ever thought, spoken, done, all of our contracts, relationships since we left Source. It is a valuable resource of information that people are able to tap into to get clarity, to get guidance, just to find out why things are the way they are in their life. The Akashic really helps us do that. This is a great series of classes if you're already getting intuitive information, meaning you're either getting visuals or you're hearing things or you just know things or you feel things. This is a great class to step into to amplify the information that you're receiving from a higher level of source versus just your intuition. If you'd like to find out more about my series of classes for the Akashic Records, please check out on our website under classes and look for Akashic Record Certification. I hope to see you in class, or I hope to see you at the center here at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts. Have a great day and thanks for listening.
Well, welcome back to the show. Our guest today is Mandara Cromwell, and we're talking about sound healing using her devices, the AMI 750. I'm curious, where do you start with a diagnosis? Is this an energy diagnosis on your part? Do you use a Western medicine diagnosis as a jumping off place? How do you get there to know what you're going to work with?
Dave, that's a really great question, and I'm so glad you asked. We have kind of two ways that we work with this. If you are working with a healthcare practitioner that wants to work with us as well, and we come up with a program to say that you're going through a specific detox or a program that is very focused, we work with them. But generally, for the general public, and this is how we help many people, particularly at this time when we've been through this pandemic where a lot of people couldn't get to their doctor or get to their dentist. What are they to do? So the AMI 750 I created for the at-home user. So the device comes with 10 channels that address like 95% of everything that is out there. So the first channel, so let's just say that you have a device and you go, what do I do with this? We recommend initially that you use channel 1, and that is for stress relief. Now, you might go, oh my gosh, stress, that is so overrated. Well, all of the medical journals say that stress is the underlying cause of all disease. And so if we start unpacking this, unraveling this complex web of our health with relieving the stress, what we find is all of the other issues that you have been dealing with suddenly calm down and then the really prominent one surfaces to the top. So after you're doing the stress relief channel, which helps working on the brainwave codes, the brainwaves in the nervous system, then we move into the next stage. And the next stage is usually a code for inflammation. All degenerative disease has an inflammatory component. And this is something all of us deal with. So and I have pictures on my website that people can actually go and see the thermal imaging of a very specific inflammatory process happening in the body. And then 30 minutes later, after using that inflammation protocol, how the sound has diminished that inflammatory process. So we help people on what we call a common sense type of trajectory, because the body is stressed out and we are in a lot of pain and inflammation, whether that be physical pain or emotional pain. And there are, I also have studies where I've used specific imaging called polyinterference contrast photography, where we can see, it's a special camera and software where you can see the energy fields, and you can actually see the energy blockages in a person's field. And then how after 30 minutes of using a emotional release protocol, you see that field clearing. And so the specifics of the AMI 750 is how can we empower people in their own homes to have something that is in their medicine chest that they can use on a daily basis to help fortify their field and, deal with all of the everyday things that we have to deal with, like the environmental toxins from our air and our food and our water. And, we have so much body burden already. What can we do to empower people with the healing power of sound? And so that's the goal. So we have free consultations when people contact us if they're working with a specific health condition. We ask them to fill out a health history. We have a medical panel that if there's something that we haven't come across before that is a real puzzle, we take it to them and figure out the best way to really address that particular system quickly. Mm-hmm. Because let's say, we all know, hey, the clock is ticking. We need to get on with this healing, right?
Absolutely. Well, like all devices, is this either it helps or does nothing, or could you misuse it or get too much?
Good question. And that is the beauty of the audible sound. So the sounds that are emitted from the AMI 750 are all audible, and they're tones, and they are layered in. So, you will hear the shifts of the different frequency patterns every minute or two or three. And it is the type of device that if you do not need that particular frequency, then that frequency passes on through. And so let me pause here and just explain something here. The frequency patterns I mentioned a little bit earlier all have 5 frequencies. So let's just say that here are 5 frequencies to help your liver. And so it's like you go into the banquet room, and here's a buffet table of 5 different dishes. And your liver may go, oh, I really want a little bit of dish 1, 2, and 3, and not so much of the 4 and 5 frequencies. So those frequencies will pass on through, and your body will absorb the main of the 1, 2, and 3. So it is producing, each code is producing harmonics and subharmonics. And so they're kind of, massaging the cells and the matrix around the cells, the shape of the cells, kind of like I say, it's the master pitch pipe that calls everything back into order. Mm-hmm. And so that is a little bit of an insight of how it actually works.
I'm curious, because you've looked at so much of this, what is the impact on chakras? Does it tend to open chakras when you go through a treatment sequence?
We do have a nurse practitioner. The good news is that a lot of holistic doctors, integrative doctors, nurses, chiropractors are really embracing this type of sound therapy. And so we have a nurse practitioner in Florida, and she does use a clear pendulum. But she says the moment that people get on the device where their chakras have been closed prior to the session, after the session, they're all open and operating. Okay. So we have people who use energetic testing like that.
Uh-huh. I do a lot of work with pendulums and with people, and I'm very sensitive with muscle testing on people's behalves, or I do it on myself for them. So this comes through, and one of my other gifts is I can close my eyes and I can see people's chakras and just determine what state they're in. Yeah.
That's wonderful. What a gift. That's great.
Yeah. So you've really, well, your box is suitable for both practitioners to have as one of their tools, but also for people to buy them themselves and use them at home.
That's correct. And we have a lot of offices who have not only one device, but they have a room full of devices so that people come in and they can, get their session that is really easy to administer, because it's basically an unattended therapy. Once the person kind of knows what to expect, they don't really need to have attended therapy.
So how often would somebody come in and have a session typically?
The studies that I have is that it's really great if people can come 2 to 3 times a week. So I have a lot of studies that people come in just twice a week, because that's what they can, get away from their daily life and come in and use a therapy session. But our actual studies that showed us exactly how long it really takes is through our equine studies. And this is, we're using diagnostic ultrasound on thoroughbred racehorses who had torn a tendon. And this is similar to the Achilles tendon in a human athlete. Or you don't even have to be an athlete to tear your Achilles tendon, but a lot of them do have that problem. So, and if you know anybody who has had that, basically their career is over. And it's the same thing with these thoroughbred racehorses. They go out, they run, they tear the tendon, and then they're brought back in, they're given rest, just like if you sprained your ankle or tore a tendon, you would rest it for a while. These horses rest, and then after a while, the owner comes by and goes, hey, listen, I'm paying for the feed, I'm paying for the vet, I'm paying for the stall, I'm paying for this horse needs to get out and run. And unfortunately, it's a business. So they take the horse out and start running the horse again. And what happens when you re-injure? All of that scar tissue tears, and the body's natural process is to start layering in not only more scar tissue, but now we have adhesions, because the body says, oh, wow, I didn't do a good enough job there, so I need to send in reinforcements. So with these horses, after they go through this process a few times, they're no good. So they get thrown away, unfortunately. So I had a vet who was very interested in using holistic measures to help these horses. And he himself used acupuncture along with his, other veterinary skills. And so what we started doing is we scanned these horses' legs every 10 days to see what was the sound doing. And after 6 weeks, the tissue was totally regenerated. Totally regenerated. You couldn't even tell there had been an injury. There was no scar tissue or no adhesions. You could just look at this and go, this is not the same horse that we looked at 6 weeks ago with this injury. So what that therapy looked like was 6 weeks, was the whole therapy. We administered Cymatherapy 5 times a week for the first 2 weeks. Then we backed off and 3 times a week for the following 4 weeks, ending at the 6-week period. So if you were really wanting to get a good push off with sound, this very specific targeted type of sound, that is what I would recommend. So the the cost of the device is somewhat affordable, and if you wanted to have it in your own home, great. But if you want to try it at a practitioner's office first, that would be a good course of action as well. Now, people who have something like, say, systemic inflammation, and you can't, that they say that is the silent killer, because we can't really feel inflammation until it's really gone way out of hand, and then it manifests in some, other very serious condition. And so if you didn't have something like thermal imaging in your office or access to that, then, you would want to know that, you're helping your body with this inflammatory process to calm it down. Once the inflammation process is calmed down, then your body has its resources, its energy to go throughout the day, to start repairing the immune system, to start repairing the respiratory system or the digestive system. So in the United States, we are governed under the laws of the FDA, and this particular device is a Class 1 device, which means you don't need a prescription to own one, and the claims that we make are that it relieves stress and pain. So we don't really talk about specific conditions, even though we have thousands of people who contact us about the big ones of stroke, cancer, Lyme, autoimmune, all of these conditions. But what are those cells? They're very stressed out. So if we can release the body burden, if we can fortify the field and help people with a strong barrier of vibration, then when we have to deal with these added burdens of air and the EMFs and things like that, we're better up to the challenge. And so we can get that under control. One area that we've had really great success with is teeth. And there are a lot of people who don't realize that infection and inflammation begins to brew in the oral cavity. And so if you've ever had any, cavities filled or any crowns or bridges or root canals, all of these unfortunately leave a little space there where anaerobic bacteria builds, and it gets out of hand. And we have seen this particularly in our research that we've done with women who have had breast thermal imaging, and they have real hot spots. So the thermal imaging people will tell you that they can see what's going on in the body 8 to 10 years prior to what you can see on a mammogram. So if you can see in the torso what's happening and have a head start on this, that's a really great thing. And we really encourage women to find a certified thermal imaging person in your area and get your thermal scans, men and women. So what we found is that when we're looking at these scans, so my background is in Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. So when we were first doing this testing, I asked the thermographer, could you also get the camera to come up to the oral cavity? And 9 times out of 10, we saw on these subjects the inflammation streaming down through the lymph system, the neck, down to whichever side of the chest, that breast that was having suspicious activity. So that's great information to have. So number one, all of your listeners, please get regular thermal imaging and see what's going on. It's not a real expensive way to keep a check on, the inflammatory process in your body. Now, I'm only talking that it only looks into the body about a half an inch. So you can't get as deep into the organs, but if you can see on the surface, and particularly it shows up great in the oral cavity, where that infection might be draining down to. Now, infection in the oral cavity also comes, up into the brain as well. It goes both ways. And so if you have a lot of heavy metal and toxicity here, you might see that, and then drainage into the sinuses, and all of this drains down through the mouth and into the lymph system throughout the rest of the body. If any of those elimination channels, and a lot of people don't pay attention to the lymph system, hey, this is the system that takes the trash out. And so if you can imagine that you have a house and you never take the trash out, things are going to get pretty yucky real soon. So you don't want that stagnation in the lymph system. And for a lot of people who, do go and it does manifest into, say, a breast cancer, the lymph nodes in the underarm area are usually firing really hot red, and they are the first things that they take because they have been saturated with stagnation and not good things.
Wow. Pretty interesting. Thank you for sharing all that. It's wonderful information. So how would somebody, if they were interested in having a session, how do they contact you? How do they find out more?
Please contact us through our website. It's cymatechnologies.com. And Cyma is spelt with a C, C-Y-M-A, and then technologies, TECHNOLOGIES.com. And yeah, send us an email, and we'll get you hooked up to a good practitioner, or find somewhere for you to have a session. I'd also like to offer your listeners a free gift that is about all types of sound. Dave, in the beginning, you mentioned that I produced the Art and Science of Sound conference in 2017. This is beautiful footage. It's a 90-minute video of just really exquisite images of dance and artistic visuals that people can use for a healing experience. I give a presentation about the mystical side of cymatics, and my colleague John Reed talks about all types of sound, of using sound with the voice, of sound with the piano, a tuning fork, a bowl, etc. Anyway, I'd like, if your listeners want to email me through the website, I'll send them the code that they can access that 90-minute video. It's quite beautiful, and I'm happy to share it to enhance the awareness of the power of sound.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show. I love sound therapy, and I'm more and more drawn to it for obvious reasons, right? So I have crystal bowls, I have Tibetan bowls. I want to learn more about tuning forks. I love sound, how music affects us, I think is really awesome if you understand that. So I definitely love sound. I have your book. I've got some of your sound stuff. So I love all the pieces. So thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you. Thanks to the both of you for all the work that you're doing. And, it takes all of us to come together to really fill in the pieces to the health puzzle. And by health, I don't just mean the physical body, I mean all the subtle bodies as well. So thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and to all our listeners, thank you for joining us and listening to this show. Our next guest will be gifted intuitive Christine Keeland. It should be fascinating. Please continue listening to messages from several of our practitioners at DYSG. It should be informative. We'll see you. Goodbye.
Angels are loving messengers and guardians, helping us find our way on our life mission and protecting us on the journey. Are you seeking an angelic perspective of yourself or situation? Ruby Wayward is an angel intuitive, using her intuition, angel tarot, and oracle cards to provide angelic perspective readings. Learn which angels are helping you or wanting to work with you, and gain insight from your guardian angels. Ruby not only works with angels, but with other mystic manifestors, messengers, and elementals like the dragons, unicorns, and fairies. Ruby can connect with you to your personal dragon, channel messages from your unicorn, and guide you in best practices with the fairies. Find Ruby Wayward as a reader at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts every second Sunday of the month. Walk-ins are welcome, or call Discover Your Spiritual Gifts at 720-573-4275 to set up an appointment.
I'm Kate Thomason, aka the Joy Architect. And they call me the Joy Architect because I help people build lives based on their joy. I learned from a near soul death what it takes to make a life joyful, because I realized that that was what was missing. And when I brought it all back in, I realized, aha, this is how it works. This is how you make life fun. You bring the soul in, and now I have a method, a process by which people can have this relationship with themselves, their greater self, very quickly. And they find that foundation of fun in their life that they can use to build their life on. I'm a practitioner at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, so they can look on the website under the practitioners there. Or you can find me at my website, KatherineBlakeThomason.com, KathereIne, Blake, BLAKE, Thomason, TOMASSON.com. I'm available by appointment 7 days a week. I work at the center on Fridays from 10 to 5. So I'm Kate Thomason, aka the Joy Architect, and I have a class here called Flow Your Magic at the Discover Your Spiritual Gifts Center. And in this class, what I do is I open the connection I have with Spirit. And with this connection, I bring others into the comfort they have in the relationship they have with this energy. And naturally what flows from that is a playfulness where they very magically engage their play in the world that they enjoy. And so we share this space together where they're flowing the magic of their heart flow with each other, and we create a synergy that then gives back to us. And the fun of it is we get to enjoy the gifts of this field back to us as we give our gifts into it. Most people find it's a very playful and magical connection they find with themselves and with each other. So the Flow Your Magic is offered 3 times a month, one by Zoom only. The other 2 are in person here at the center. So they're usually the first week of the month. There are a few exceptions, but that can be found on my website under the offerings Flow Your Magic, and it'll give all the dates and details. KatherineBlakeThomason.com, KathereIne, Blake, BLAKE, Thomason, TOMASSON.com.
Discover connection, awaken sacredness, become empowered. minutes for our show on Blog Talk Radio.